I definitely had no idea who they were. I don't know how I started reading this book. I remember I looked for it desperately in a lot of half-price books.
Because they were all stolen.
Right. And I ended up paying like $7 for a book that was half falling apart because I was like, I just need to read this at this point. But I wasn't very interested before I read it. After I read it, I definitely completely fell in love with it. It's still something probably the most, the generation and the movement I'm most passionate about. Which was also interesting with this EE specifically because I felt like if I was going to write a literature paper, then I should write on like Milton or, I don't know, some famous, very old,
classic,
like, intellectual people. On the Road is very kind of seen as a popular culture novel and not really an intellectual novel. So I kind of felt bad about that too at some point. I was like, maybe I'm not being an academic. But honestly, I think I was much more passionate about the book than I would have been with anything else I wrote. So.
Yes. It's just an alarm.
Oh,
Don't be alarmed, it's an alarm. Any other questions for Kate? She was definitely very excited after she read it. She told everyone. It's like, Miss Childress, I read on the road. Let's talk about it. All right, thank you, Kate.
thank you.
Yours, Veda, you just shared everything you got here. I don't know how it works. There we go. All right, next is Veda Allen. It's visual arts.
Yeah.
Visual arts. There you go.
All right, hello everyone. As Ms. Childress said, my name is Veda Allen. I'm also, like everyone else, a senior. So with my extended essay, as a quick background, I was all over the place when I first started researching. I initially started off with maybe like junior year, I knew I wanted to do something with visual arts because I've always been interested in that. And I knew that with the extended essay, we had a lot of freedom in the sense that we got to choose what we wanted to do and kind of go our own way with it. This is like a huge kind of like step of independence for us. So I wanted to harness that and use something, choose a topic that I knew I would enjoy researching, and at the same time, like be able to learn a lot from it. So I initially started with maybe I could do something with the Italian Renaissance. And I thought maybe I could see how Christianity impacted certain artists and how it changed their style or like the topic of what they painted about. But I realized that it wasn't, for visual arts, the tricky part is you have to be very focused on the visual art aspect and not really anything else. So I kind of switched around back to like maybe the German Renaissance era, as there was a lot more variety within the artists and their works, and there's a lot more like obvious contrasts of before and afters. But finally I settled on pointillism. So I thought, like how I came to this idea was I had a flashback of, I think my freshman year, I went to Study in the Park with George, a musical, and it kind of went through George Seurat's journey of how he came to the pointillist technique and how he used it and how he kind of went crazy trying to figure out how it works and trying to perfect it. I initially wanted to see like the tracking of how pointillism and divisionist techniques evolved in his paintings, but I realized that I didn't have a specific argument in that. So finally, I came to my question of, in what ways did George Seurat's style of pointillism influence the works of neo-impressionist artists Paul Signac and Camille Pissarro? So to give you a quick idea of what the pointillist technique is, I know this is super zoomed in, but this is one of George Seurat's most famous paintings. Made his little debut in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I don't know if whoever's seen that. There's a scene where they focus on it, but this was later on in George Seurat's career, kind of in the late 1880s. He spent so much time working on this. He did sketches of specific parts, and then he mapped out which colors he would use in the areas. So I know it's hard to see, like I said, it's very zoomed in, but if you look at like a less zoomed in photo of it, you can see that there's just individual dots of paint. They're not at all mixed in, and it's up to your eyes to like optically mix it for you, which is the whole idea behind divisionism and pointillism. To give you a background on like what exactly is the neo-impressionist era, I did research on what the Impressionist era was, and it was in the 1880s, early 1880s. And basically, this style kind of derived from, it's derived from the more sketch-like qualities of paintings, and it's more focused on like views of modern day life and kind of like in motion pictures. Like people walking through the streets, or maybe just like a sunset, or things like that, but they didn't really have an air of like finality. They also had like brush strokes kind of like not really carelessly placed on the canvas, but it seemed as such in these Impressionist paintings. So the society that emerged that was kind of like, the society that emerged from Impressionist era, they were called the Anonymous Society of like painters, sculptors, printmakers, etc. Like they had such a long title. But they came from the Société des Artistes Français. And this was like, they showed like an art show, they were very selective, they were extremely selective in the paintings that they would allow to be shown in their art shows. So thus came the Anonymous Society of Painters, etc. And the founders were Claude Monet, Camille Pissarro, among others. And they were focused on more Impressionist paintings. And then Georges Seurat, when he comes in and 1881, he was showcased in the Société des Artistes Français, and he tried to submit one of his more famous paintings called the Bathers at Asnia, where you can kind of see his divisionist techniques start to arise. And just a quick little side note, there's a difference between divisionism and pointillism. Divisionism focuses more on kind of individual brush strokes, and there's still the idea of dots. However, they're not like extremely pronounced, and pointillism is specifically the application of dots onto the canvas. So his Bathers at Asnia was rejected from the Society of French Artists. So he kind of formed a separate group called the Société des Artistes Indépendants in 1884. He did this with Paul Signac and a few others. So as a quick background of Georges Seurat in general, in my extended essay, I kind of went the overview of Impressionism and then the creation of Neo-Impressionism, and which is what the Société des Artistes Indépendants, what they were. So they were the more, and that term Neo-Impressionism wasn't coined until 1886, but looking back, that's what we refer to it as. So Georges Seurat, when he was he was born in 1874, and he moved to Fontainebleau, France in 1854 when he was born. He moved to Fontainebleau, France in the late 1870s. He always had an interest in sculpting, painting, whatever, when he was young. And when he was in 1878 to 1879, he attended the School of Beautiful Arts, where he was taught by another famous sculptor. He mostly did sculptings and charcoal drawings to start off. And it wasn't until he was introduced to the works of Charles Blanc and Eugene Chevreul and Ogden Rude and Delacroix, from which he kind of, with these research, with all of their research with optical effects and how colors are mixed, he kind of used those and mushed them all together to create this pointillist technique. From Blanc, he discovered Chevreul, and Chevreul focused more on how complementaries and how ideas of contrast. And in one of Chevreul's works, he explains that basically by placing a lighter color near a darker color, it highlights the lighter color throughout the piece and creates a big contrast. Same with complementary colors. If you place a complementary color, say orange and blue, if you place orange next to a blue or anywhere in the painting, it brings out the idea, the vividness of both colors within the painting. And then Rude, kind of his work, his book about optical and how colors are mixed and everything, was considered the veritable Bible of the Neo-Impressionist movement, and is what Georges Seurat primarily drew his influence from his inspiration. So he also saw from Delacroix, who was another artist, he read from Blanc that Delacroix kind of separated tints of colors. He didn't quite use the divisionist technique, but he did separate his colors within the canvas to help bring out the picture and bring out contrast. So it took Seurat many years to figure out and to perfect his techniques. So I thought this was so interesting to like kind of map it out and see where exactly Seurat drew his inspiration from in the very beginning. And knowing this, so yeah, I thought, okay, yeah, so he kind of used, so like I kind of tracked how Seurat kind of started off, and I noticed that in his charcoal drawings, you can actually see the ideas of divisionism almost in the sense that you can see white dots poking through the black of the content crayon that he used. He painted this in 1882 or 1883. It's not really known exactly when this was painted, when this was drawn. But when Seurat first started painting, his primary style involved painting involving like one person on the canvas. However, their features are are not easy to discern. For example, in this one, the lamp, you can barely see the shadow of the woman's eyes and her mouth, and just the suggestion of her features. And you can see the lamp kind of casts the shadow across her face, and there is a lot of contrast within this, mostly on her nose and where the lamp is located in the painting, in the charcoal drawing, excuse me. So it also, the reason why this was kind of brought out, like there's the idea, there's like the sense, or you can see the kind of contrast and like how white is poking through from like the white of the paper is poking through, is because he used the Conte crayon and he used heavily textured paper. So when he pressed down hard with the crayon, like this is basically the end result. Then when he started incorporating the ideas of Rouge, Chevreul, Blanc, and Delacroix, he started experimenting with it. In 1882, he painted Stonebreaker and Wheelbarrow, and you can see, so he still used his style of incorporating typically one person to focus on, and it's not very detailed in the sense that you can't really see the person's features, and you can't really make out like the details of everything, like his surroundings. So I noticed that there's still broken brushstrokes. So he didn't fully embrace like divisionist techniques yet. That he didn't really perfect it at this point. He was more experimenting. You can still see ideas of contrast within the purple hues that are placed underneath the wheelbarrow and in the background, and on the Stonebreaker's shirt and head. And you can also see that like he kind of separates these colors. So these colors, the paintings that are used aren't fully mixed on this canvas. You can see the obvious brushstrokes of green, orange, blue, yellow, whatever, and it still works to create this like detailed but not detailed painting, if that makes sense. Then it kind of evolves. So this is the Bather's Place Asnières, which is the one that was rejected from Société des Artistes Français. This does not involve the pointillist technique. However, it does have the obvious divisionist technique within it. As I said before, pointillism is like derived from divisionism. It's more specified towards dots on the canvas. Divisionism still involves dots. However, there's less pronounced, and it also involves a lot of like light and luminescence. So in this painting, you can see that Seurat used, he called this iridation, which is basically the luminous, like he created this like luminous like halo around his central figures within the painting. For example, one of the boys in the water over here, you can see there's like a small halo around him. And it's like that with a lot of the people that are in the water, a lot of the objects that are in the water, and it draws the viewer's attention to these specific points on the canvas. You can also see that you can still just like pick out the specific colors used. For example, in the sky, it's not just one color of blue, or it's not one gradient of like dark blue to light blue. You can see there's dots of gray, orange, blue, green, and they all kind of create this more realistic scene. So from here, this is where I kind of got stuck in my research with my extended essay. I read from the most notable source ever, Wikipedia, that Paul Signac was one of the fathers of pointillism. So initially, when I had gotten to this point in my extended essay, I thought, what if I do research on Paul Signac? And what if I determine kind of how they got their inspiration to carry out the divisionist and pointillist techniques in their works? And what if I see how if they did use similar scientists, such as like say they both use Chevreul, how their works paralleled and how they differed and how they incorporated like colors within their paintings and how they used the pointillist technique. However, as I did more research, it turns out that Signac, he saw Seurat's piece at Béliers et Asnières. He saw it at the first art show from the Société des Artistes Indépendants. He saw it in 1884, and he thought this technique was amazing, and he thought, why not incorporate it? Signac thought, why not incorporate it in his own works? And he thought it was so unique that he showed it to other artists within this society, and they all adopted it as well because they thought it was so controversial and unique and just really no one had really ever seen this before. So Paul Signac and Camille Pizarro were among the first two to adopt this technique. So what I did from here was I tracked how, both the befores and afters of before. So before they saw Seurat's works, and then after they saw Seurat's work and how they incorporated pointillism individually within their paintings and how they differ from Seurat's work. So I'm just going to focus on Signac. I took one of his works from it's called Garden at Asnières, which was painted in 1883, a year before he was introduced to Seurat's style of pointillism. So you can see it's painted in more impressionist technique. There's the idea of broken brushstrokes. The colors are just mixed on the page, however, you can still pinpoint exactly where the brush hit the canvas because the paint isn't fully integrated throughout. So you can see there's not less vibrant colors. It's kind of a muddy brown, grays, darker greens that are used. And then following this is after he saw 1893, one of his more famous pointillist paintings, which is Place de Lycée Central. And this is immediately it hits you how vibrant and colorful this is. And none of Paul Signac's works prior to seeing Seurat's Béliers et Asnières with his pointillist technique, his paintings did not have this type of color or this type of variation. So Signac uniquely uses contrast within the lighter colors of the rainbow. He uses a lot of yellows, blues, oranges, just really vibrant colors, and it hits your eye all at once. But it's still a beautiful depiction of the sea. However, I noticed that following Seurat's death in 1891, Paul Signac and Camille Pizarro they did continue to use the pointillist technique within their paintings. Paul Signac did it more because as soon as Seurat died, Paul Signac was unspokenly became the father of the Neo-Impressionist movement. He wrote a paper or something that kind of basically claimed Seurat as the Delacroix of the Neo-Impressionist movement. It claimed that Seurat was the one who really fathered the Neo-Impressionist movement, really steered it towards this new style of painting, which is pointillism. However, he slowly just kind of lost harmony within his paintings, because pointillism is mostly about harmony within the colors and how they hit your eye. He lost that harmony in the 20th century, and he never regained it, as you can see in this painting. So painted in 1921 in St. Paul de Vence. He goes back to it's this whisper of pointillism that's left. You can kind of see the individual colors that he used. However, there's none of that beautiful vibrancy that was in his previous paintings. And you can see it goes back to the sketch-like quality of Impressionist techniques, the uneven brushstrokes of Impressionist techniques, and so on. So my initial conclusion, was basically that pointillism did not have the lasting effect that I thought it would have had, considering it was such a controversial painting technique and considering it was so unique. And I stated at the end of my conclusion that Impressionism ironically outlasted the Neo-Impressionist movement because all of the artists in the Neo-Impressionist movement moved back to their original styles of painting. I realized I didn't explain what pointillism is. I'm sorry about that. So basically, just kind of backtrack of everything. Scientists from this time, from the late 1800s, they claimed that light hits your eye in different wavelengths. And once the cones kind of analyze like what color it is, and like the receptors in your eye, like they're like, okay, this is X color, this is X color. So basically what pointillism does is when it places the complementary or primary colors next to each other, when your eye is like from a certain distance, your eye optically mixes them. So for example, if you place blue and green if you place blue and yellow next to each other, your eye perceives it as green. But when you zoom in closely on the painting, you can see that it's just blue and yellow placed so close together that it just appears green. However, the thing is, even though pointillism does involve some sort of aspect of distance when you view the paintings to get the best, like the most efficient effect of what the painter is trying to have you see within the colors, there's really no, like distance doesn't have that big of an effect on it. Because with pointillist techniques, it doesn't matter how big or small the dots are. It varies among artists. George Seurat, his dots were extremely tiny. Same with Signac. However, Camille Pissarro was a little bit more obvious where he dotted on the canvas with his brush. So like distance doesn't really have that much of an effect. But yeah, so that's how pointillism works, and it's just like the optical mixing that like the painter doesn't really do it, your eye does it for you. So like kind of like are the artist, you help the artist along with seeing his final, like his or her final product. So yeah, that was my extended essay. Anyone has any questions?
I just had, oh, sorry. You talk about pointillism not having a lasting effect, and then you describe pointillism at the very end, which is helpful, because it occurred to me that the pop art movement, in theory, took some of that idea, right, which is let's make a much more graphical interpretation, right, you have these big points, and, so I guess like most art it kind of reinvents and comes back, right, so am I off base completely that pointillism maybe has had an effect in terms of influencing other movements, maybe not as a standalone movement, it doesn't exist today, but.
You're actually, that's actually true. Pointillism, it didn't really have an effect directly. However, people have seen these paintings and they kind of incorporate like the older style pointillism in their own way. Claude Monet actually, and same with, I can't think of his name, Victor Hugo.